Unless you're sitting up in the cab, then you have to get my attention the old-fashioned way. Sorry, I lied. There are no yellow safety strips. But what I do have
Enjoy the tour.
are cheetahs. There's a couple hiding in the shadows underneath the tall, dark green bushes. I'm going to pull slightly past them, though we'll focus in on this one who's clearly in view. About halfway between us and the smaller fallen tree. World's fastest land mammals. Cheetahs, of course, capable of bursts of speed up to 70 miles an hour. Seen here going a little bit closer to their typical top speed.
He's right there, straight
Of
ahead.
0 miles.
He's up right now.
Cheetahs spend 19 to 20 hours a day resting, relaxing, saving up their energy. Always try to make sure that they have a little bit of gas left in the tank. When they need it. Also to the right-hand side of the vehicle, we'll see some beautiful birds. Some from California, like the wading ibis or the gulls. And some from Africa, such as the greater flamingos. You'll see in a tight-knit group right along the edge of the pond fence. Which, if you are a long-time park visitor, you probably remember at one point the flamingos had the run of this whole pond. But what we found was that actually made them a little bit too nervous. Flamingos like a much tighter group to herd, or a flock, I should say. And since we put the internal fence up here, they've actually been more comfortable. Every animal, of course, is an individual, and every species needs its own particular habitat. We'll discuss that more as we travel along. For now, I need to finish up the old safety lecture, which started with telling you how to contact me in case of medical emergency. You can avoid medical emergencies by not falling off the train. So I do ask while we're moving that everybody has their bottom in your seat, just in case I have to stop suddenly and I want you to go flying. Also avoid playing with your doors or leaning up against them. Those doors won't support you. Throwing in your personal items off the tram, I cannot stop to pick them up. And last but not least, on behalf of those sitting around you, please take off your cell phone. Keep your conversation to a respectful volume. Especially now, as you'll see to the left-hand side, a beautiful view down the valley. 65 acres of habitat out there, all interconnected, with a dozen different species of animals living together, interacting together, and forming herds, just like they would in the wild. These are animals that feel more comfortable in the big open spaces. They feel at home. And as a consequence, they are much more likely to have babies. Which is why the park does see hundreds of babies born every single year. At a rate of almost a baby a day.
I think
Including, if you look very carefully from the zebra. I say you'll have to look carefully because on the right-hand side, they are all the way up at the crest of the hill, slowly crossing towards the pine tree forest. And since their foals were born about 6 months ago, the zebra have spent a lot of time up at the top of the hills, where they can get the best view of the valley below them, watching for predators. Because they don't know that there are no predators out with the prey species here at the park. The zebras take all the same precautions they would in the wild, even though they're only out there with some of their friends, like antelope and domestic cattle. Or further down the hill are fine feathered friends, half a dozen African bird species on the right-hand side. We'll start up near the waterfall and work our way back. Look for Goliath heron, a tall blue bird with a long red neck. You'll see shelducks and Egyptian geese near the water. The yellow-billed stork just to the right of the pond, that's the white bird with the big yellow bill. And a large group of Ruppel's vultures over your right-hand shoulders, which are a critically endangered carrion bird. One Ruppel's vulture can actually be seen on a nest near the waterfall, although it's tucked down into the protective nestle of branches. Well, in the world of mammals, we have waterbuck antelope to the left and red river hogs to the right. Red river hogs, especially adorable. They're trotting around right now. This is a type of wild pig native to the rainforests of Central Africa. Oh, I see what's going on. They had a treat put out for them. Let me pull up just a bit further. Looks like carrots and lettuce. As pigs, they're happy with pretty much anything. In the wild, they use their snouts and their tusks to dig for roots, and tubers, and grubs. While to our left, we have a rhinoceros heading down the hill. This is a southern white rhino, and he's happy with grass. Southern white rhinos come from the great grasslands of southern and eastern Africa. They have large rectangular heads, kept down and close to the ground, where the wide lips help them to grab huge swathes of grass all at once. And rip it up and in. Sable antelope, by contrast, tend to be a little bit more opportunistic, dark brown in color with long backwards curving horns. They live on the edge of the forest and the plains, and so will take either leaves or grass as it's available. Their dark coats help them to blend in with the long shadows and bright sunlight of their home. In the back, an ostrich pecking along at the ground. They are omnivorous and will eat both plant material and carrion. Closer to us are the eland, the largest antelopes in the world. Adults stand about 5 feet tall at the shoulder and average about 1,000 pounds each. The babies, of course, much smaller. And in the background, you'll see a couple eland locking horns together. One is at a serious size disadvantage here, you'll notice. Much less muscular, less grown, it's still a juvenile. However, it's likely that the younger eland is the one who initiated the fight, not hoping to win, but instead hoping to pick up some tips and tricks from the older and more experienced individual, which will be able to be applied later in life once the animal has grown some more muscle mass. And this kind of play fighting as training is very common amongst many species, including giraffes and rhinos, who will be coming up to our left. The giraffes peeking up over the side of the Boma wall to see our East African and black rhino. Bomas are smaller habitats used for individuals who, for one reason or another, need a little bit of special attention and care from the keepers. They let the keepers watch over them as an individual. Right now, he looks like he's curious as to what the giraffes have, and the giraffes are curious as to what he has.
That's precious.
Very cute. Don't worry, by the way, if you're a giraffe fan. We got plenty more giraffes coming, I promise. Starting now with this huge herd visible to our left. They're mixing in with all sorts of different antelope. And there is a baby giraffe out here. Though she is pretty well camouflaged. Look for the giraffe who's standing right next to a tree. He's scratching his head on the chain link, actually. The baby giraffe is directly behind that tree.
Oh.
And she's just sitting very prim and proper with just her neck and head poking above the ground. About a month old and already 6 feet tall. There's no such thing as a small giraffe.
Yeah, of course not.
So in addition to the young giraffe, we also have baby antelope belonging to the Gemsbok, which are the lavender antelope with the big V-shaped horns. The babies you'll see right in the middle of their herd are a little bit lighter tan in color than the adults. And then wildebeest spread across the far end of the dirt area. Juveniles will have more straight horns, whereas the adults have a horn with a definitive inward hook. Much like the buffalo you see ahead of us to the left, which are the dark brown animals with the inward hooking horns. Well, to the right-hand side of the vehicle, we have Somali wild ass, one of the most endangered animals on planet Earth.
Is that what I think he said?
Yeah,
They're silver in color with black striping along their legs. They were devastated by the war in their home country of Somalia.
No.
And today, less than 300 remain. Wars can be just as deadly for animals as they are for humans. That's why we work on breeding them here at the park. Just like we work with so many of our beautiful animals, of course. Several of which will be visible to the left as we climb the hill. Another black rhinoceros inside of a boma, for example. But sadly, I cannot stop until we get to the top of the hill. So, as we continue to climb, we will see kudu, which are tan antelope with faint white stripes in their backs. Adults and babies both. Across the hill will be cob, small copper-orange antelope from the rich grasslands around Lake Victoria. And then closer to us, the roan antelope, with their black and white face and short, backwards curving horns. All told, there are more than 70 different antelope species just in Africa. They live in every single habitat across the continent. And generally speaking, are one of the largest, most diverse, and most successful groups of large mammals in the world. Especially as we finally crest up to the top of the hill here, you'll notice the roan and the cob, just a beautiful view back down the valley. They might not have the long neck of the giraffe, but they can certainly improvise using the terrain. Well, to your right-hand side, beautiful birds. Look for pelicans here and there across the island in the water. You'll also see the crowned crane on the island. That's the tall black and white bird with the yellow feathers on its head. A bright coloration display, which helps them to show off to one another as part of their courtship ritual. For a bird like the crowned crane, bright colors indicate an easy ability to gather food, which in turn implies an individual easily able to provide for its offspring. Both crowned cranes want to demonstrate this. They are typically monogamous. and both the male and the female participate equally in gathering food for the young. Many of the more ground-bound mammals we've seen today, you'll notice, tend to have more camouflage coats. The giraffes and the antelope, for example, down the valley, fading into the background. Whereas the buffalo, with their dark coats, kind of pop, stand out, because they are big enough and strong enough to fight off most predators. And the buffalo hope that by having very distinctive coats, predators will look to see how many of them there are and how big all the buffalo are, and then go attack somebody else instead. Meanwhile, below us to the left, some animals that come from the most extreme parts of Africa. Look near the round buildings with the cone-shaped roofs. You'll see a dromedary camel. It's a type of camel that has a single hump, from the deserts of northern Africa and southwestern Asia, as well as udad scattering out of the camel's way. These are a type of mountain sheep from northwestern Africa, where they live primarily on rocky outcroppings like the one across the valley. Udad can go from the bottom of that hill up to the top in just a few seconds, bounding from one seemingly impossible ledge to another. They can fit all four hooves into a space smaller than a human hand. By doing so, they're able to access sources of food that would otherwise be inaccessible. It's a competitive advantage. So I got distracted right at the end there. We have some surprise guest stars on the right-hand side. Just underneath the pepper tree, you have to look very carefully, and you might see a rack of antlers sticking out. There's at least a buck and a doe back there that I saw, possibly more. Our local mule deer. So not animals that really live at the park. They live in the sage scrub around us and stop by the park pretty frequently to help trim the landscaping here. I'm sure our horticulture department appreciates it. Just like we should appreciate these beautiful views coming up to both sides of the vehicle here. Some really incredible animals. We'll have springbok over our left-hand shoulders. A small, fast antelope able to hit speeds over 50 miles an hour. Well, in front of us to the right are some of the most impressive headgear sets at the park. You've got the Barbary red deer, small brown deer from the Atlas Mountains of northwestern Africa. You've got some domestic cattle up here. Those are a type of dairy cow, actually, herded in commercial milk production around the world. And the scimitar horned oryx, white in color with a brown neck and long backward sweeping horns. A critically endangered desert antelope from northern Africa. They were devastated by overhunting in the 1960s and 70s, and in fact disappeared completely from the wild. But luckily, those scimitar horned oryx have been making a comeback. They've bred extremely well at places like the park. We've had